Alright guys, we're back with the DDM podcast. I'm here with a couple more special guests. We got Reese Marin from the East Coast, and then we got Dan Perlenfine from the Midwest, and then again, as always, we have Jelani. So we have a bunch of cool topics to get to today. Reese is, if you want to give him a quick intro on just who you are, kind of a little bit on your experience, because you've been in drifting for a long time.
Yeah, so I've been in drifting for, I think, 14 years now. I mainly come out from the East Coast, the Club Loose in the New Jersey area. Did a lot of drifting in the grassroots out there, and eventually got to the point where I started doing pro-am in 2013. Did really well in that. I think it was top 5 in U.S. drift. Thought about doing the whole pro thing, but I obviously was just like, I just didn't have the funds to do it. So I was just like, nah, man, probably not the best thing to do. So I started dealing a lot more with Club Loose and going to those events since they were the most local events. And that kind of segued into like, hey man, you should start instructing. And then eventually instructing turned into like actually getting contracts to go into other organizations to go instruct. I've been lucky enough to go be a guest instructor for over at Drift 101 in California at Willow Springs. Chelsea called me up and told me to come do some clinics with them. We did that for a couple of years, and then in 2018 we decided to work together and form the School of Drift that's over in Portland area, over at Pat Acres. And just been going around everywhere, you know, California, all around the U.S., went down to South America to do some instruction. So it's been really cool to be able to just kind of share the knowledge and get a lot more people drifting.
Awesome, Dan.
Yeah, so I started drifting in 2014. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I started at a local, just fun track day, kind of, I guess, grassroots thing, if you want to call it that. And then I met Drift Indy and started driving with Drift Indy and hit all of their track days, kind of starting in 2015. And then I got into a little bit of Pro-Am. I ran some MDU in 2016. And then just went back to the fun track day stuff. MDU shut down, so I didn't do that in 2017. Last year I went down to Clarksville, Indiana and ran the Riverside Drift Competition Series and ended up winning that last year. And I just do a lot of fun track days. I just like to drive, man. So
Seat time.
Yeah, just seat time. So I just go out and drive. I hit all the track days. I like doing little mini comps. I'm going to run the MDU shootout this season. So yeah, this is like my 5th year into it.
Cool. Awesome. So, first question of the day is, what is the biggest challenge for new drifters coming into the drift world and learning how to drift with some basic cars and stuff like that? So, I mean, since you teach people to drift, Reese, I mean, what's the most common issue you see with people that are trying to get in and to link the course, you know?
I think with anybody that's kind of new to the sport, I have to kind of break it up into 2 subjects. Like, there's people that know of drifting that want to learn, and then there's people that don't know anything about drifting and they want to have the experience. Like, hey, I want to attempt to try to do drifting. I've seen this on TV, I've seen this in the movies, Mercedes commercials. I mean, you name it, drifting's been everywhere in the United States when it comes to marketing and stuff like that. So there is like that older 35 to 50 that are surprisingly interested in this, but those are the type of people that aren't going to go to like a grassroots event, because the appearance that we carry as grassroots drifters isn't what's really going to get their attention. Maybe they don't feel comfortable, whatever it may be. But you go to a place like Drift 101 in California, in Willow Springs, it's a different environment. The professional setting of Willow Springs kind of allows it, and being in Los Angeles, or in the Los Angeles area, about an hour out, you know, you have that demographic that goes in there to learn that, oh, I was a time attack driver, or I was a rally driver, and I want to come learn, I want to kind of have this introduction into drifting. And the way Naoki, he's been instructing there for I think like a decade or something like that, he instructs in a very professional manner, and what I mean by that, like a race car mentality type of way of saying things, whereas I have more of a grassroots drifter, like, yeah, like take this corner, initiate, shred here, go wide here. So I think that was the difference between that. I think the hardest thing for those two is car setup. Like, if they don't have the education or the understanding or maybe the terminology and then apply that to a pretty basic setup car, they start having issues, because what eventually happens is, if either one of them decides to get into drifting, the first place you go to get any type of information is the internet. And the problem with the internet is that, although the internet has a really amazing benefits and a lot of good information out there, to try to weed through that information and make sense of it and know what is something you should use opposed to what is an opinion can get really difficult. So I think that's where drifting as a culture, I think that's where we have our flaw. There really isn't a place to go to or anything like that unless you know of these schools. Drift 101 is that you have in California. Me and Chelsea have the one over in the Portland area that we've been working on, and having people come up, drive properly well set up cars. We have all E36s, M3s, very basic setups. Coilovers. We don't try to reinvent the wheel. We try to keep it almost as OEM as possible. So this way we can kind of show people yo, you can get into this for a fairly decent price. It isn't when I'm talking fairly decent, I'm unfortunately or fortunately talking under 10 grand, which if you're going to get into drifting and this is what you're going to do, that's a pretty realistic number. You know what I mean? You're going to be spending right around that. Yes, I've heard people that spend way less than that, and that's probably because you're hooked up or whatever it may be, or you got this crazy deal. But the majority of the drifters that are going to get into this, that's pretty much what you're dealing with. You're dealing with that a little around that money.
You're dealing with a stock fade car.
Yeah.
You buy the car for $3,500 and put $1,000 coilovers on it, and another $500-600 in suspension, steering wheel, seat, whatever little angle mod you put on it. You're right at 10 grand.
Yeah. Or you can go to Copart and get a 350Z.
Yep.
And almost drift right out the box. You'll start realizing there's going to be some things you need.
Yep.
But see how we just loosely just say we'll go get a 350Z and go do it? Only drifters understand that from the drifting community. People that aren't in the drifting community, they don't understand why we're oh, just get a 350Z. Because they'll be well, why can't I just get a Mustang? You could get a Mustang, but it's going to be a lot easier if you just get a 350Z, because the R&D and everything has already been done. I'm sure now there's plenty of dudes that have the R&D already for the Mustang and stuff like that, but I just decided to use it as an example. Yeah. So I think that's what it is. I think if you don't have good information, you don't go to a place where you can at least learn and get good concrete advice or good guidance, you're going to end up going to the internet, obtaining these bad habits while you attempt to put a car together, and then those bad habits are going to drastically reduce your rate of learning how to do this the correct way, or what we all think is the correct way of doing this. So that's why I think all around the country you start seeing, a drift school opens up, or you'll have clinics. We came this weekend. I was lucky enough to have Edgar from Drift Indy fly me in so I could do a clinic here with Drift Indy with the drifters that I had here. It was an amazing, you saw these are your local drivers and stuff like that, and I was just really honored to come here and just be able to teach these guys the way I was taught, where I came from. You know what I mean? You teach them the basics and you allow them to develop their own style of drifting. I try not to dip my fingers too much in what their style is going to be, because I don't think that's right. You teach them the beginning, teach them the basics, and let them rock out with it.
So, Dan, what made it click for you when you started to learn how to drift? What advice did you receive that really got you to blink and really feel confident?
Relax. I think a lot of people, the biggest trouble they have, which I think the clinics help with a lot, because they're closed door clinics, so there's not a stand full of people watching you and you're not nervous about, looking like a fool. But I think when it comes down to it, half the battle I think is nerves, especially in competition, but even just getting started, or, even just track day stuff. I think once I got over the fact that it doesn't matter what other people think, I'm just trying to have fun and I want to get better at it. So I think the nerves was one of the hardest things. And then just getting the car set up correctly, alignment things can make a huge difference in how the car drives and how hard or easy it is to drive, so. Absolutely. I think learning the car setup and learning to just relax and let the car do most of the work makes a big difference.
I think you hit the nail right on the head when you said worrying about what other people think. That's other people on the internet. That's other people in your drift community, other people in your circle of friends who don't even drift. Like, I know there's someone I coaxed into getting an E46 instead of the current V8 swapping project they were building. Just get a stock E46. And I'm like, you know, this car does everything you need it to do out of the box. Like, it's golden. Weld the diff, make sure all the bushings are straight, little simple stuff. And in the process of him getting the car ready.
You won't hear.
No, you won't? Oh, sweet. In the process of him getting the car ready, you know, he had some issues with the car and he realized he wasn't going to make the first event. And the first thing he says is, oh man, people are going to make fun of me if I don't make the first event. And I'm like, bruh, who cares? Like,
fun of you either way.
They're gonna make fun of you either way. People will always find something to make fun of you about. I'm one of those people. I make fun of everybody. I make fun of everybody about everything. Oh, bro, you killed it. You touched the wall. I'm gonna make fun of you. But you know, he was really genuinely concerned about what people were gonna think if he missed the first event. They were gonna call him a wuss, this, that. And I'm like, look, man, it's better to miss these events and make sure your car is right than to bring your car to the event wrong and break it a tragic way and have a whole new world of problems to deal with, especially if you're in a tight budget. Because if you go to the track and you crash it, you know, oh, you missed this one event, now you're gonna miss the next 3 after it, you know, and you're gonna spend a whole lot of more money, and the car will never be the same again potentially too, especially if you're new to working on a drift car. You already don't, if I crash a car or I see my buddy crash an S14 or anything like that, I'm like, oh, okay, this is a simple fix because I've been through it. But when you haven't gone through all this stuff yet, like I've seen a lot of people crash cars early and it's like they feel like the world is over. Like this thing, chassis done. I'm like, dude, you need a headlight. Core support, you know.
I'm in a tie rod. It's over.
It's over, man. My origin fender cracked. So definitely, like, and then the people on social media are the worst, you know. You know,
half those dudes on social media, like, half of them don't even rip anyway. Half of them, like, all the people that I were seeing really be negative people on the internet. I mean, I sometimes will voice my opinion on the internet, but mentally, when I hear some of these people do stuff like that, all I can say to myself is like, bro, I've never gone anywhere in the country, and you're the guy lined up next to me to go tandem with.
Right.
So, like, shut up.
Exactly. I voice my opinion online too, and I actually don't drive. I haven't driven in like 6 years, but usually my opinion is constructive criticism, trying to get someone away from some form of negativity. And it's because like there's so much misinformation being spread around. Like every time, every 240SX page, every post, there's some misinformation, and I'm like, dude, you know, I think this is also a byproduct of forums not being relevant anymore, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, I'm pretty sure, like, for instance, Mike Perez, he told me, somebody told him, like, drifting is an internet sport. And it made so much sense when he told me that. Yeah. Because it's pushed by the internet. And therefore, the nature of the beast is going to be all around different because of that factor in itself. Yep. You know what I mean? And I don't think there's any way around it. I don't think any of that's going to change. I think drifting has been in America almost 20 years, right? Yep. We're due for an evolution. That's happening. It happens with every sport. It happens with skateboarding, BMXing. There's downfalls. There's basketball, football. They all go through this evolution. And I've said there's a lot of older people, you know, that don't want to let go of like the olden ways. And I'm like, look, man, I get it, but we did a lot of things wrong. And the newer generations are getting better because we're doing our job by teaching them how to do things right. So now, instead of them being good at like 29, 30 years old, now these dudes are like ready to rip 19. At 18, 19, 20 year old. Yeah, and like, how can you not be proud of that?
You know what I mean? Like, the average age in Pro 2 has to be like 21 or something.
Yeah,
like that,
yeah.
You know?
I'm 33 years old. I feel like a grandpa sometimes when I talk to these dudes. Right. I'm like, what the heck, man? Like,
and then, you know, we talking back about the old days and stuff like that. I had a conversation the other day, online actually, and someone was like, yeah, you know, Formula Drift, it's not cool because it would be better to watch them in like, you know, more traditional cars and not these crazy horsepower machines because they could just snap the throttle and spin the tires off at will and save stuff. And I'm like, but the problem is all of that stuff is visible when you do that. When you're in a car that grippy, everything you do is visible. The car's attitude shows that the suspension's soft. People don't realize those older cars are really close to what a grassroots car is now.
Right.
And you can hide corrections all day in a grassroots car. You can extend slides, you can shimmy around some apexes and do all kinds of things. You know, it's not that these guys who are stepping up in the Pro 2 and stuff aren't good. It's that you're coming from a grassroots car most of the time, and the grassroots car doesn't show all your corrections.
Yeah.
It doesn't show that
we're
stuff.
not, I don't think you get pushed to those boundaries
Yeah.
and to reach, you know, that point. And I think I think a lot of people, like where beginners end up having that issue is they get a little good, right? And then they just jump the gun and they just go, you know what I mean? Like jump the gun. And I'm like, why? Well, I think I'm good enough. And it's like, I don't know whose fault that is. I don't know if it's like their friends telling them like, yeah, you should do it, or like somebody should be out there telling whoever it is, like, yo.
It's funny you said that. I'm gonna give you my biggest problem getting started in drifting. So I got my first 240 in 2007, and I drifted it for like 2 years. I used to come down here to Killcare and do Tuesday practices. My school had a skid pad that we could practice at. I practiced there. I drifted on the street most of the time because I lived in the middle of nowhere, and the street was accessible. So yeah, I did a lot of street drifting and stuff. At the time, there were no other drifters, like big bro drifters in my area at all. Like it just didn't exist. So I was feeling myself. I'm like, dude, I'm linking stuff. I'm doing stuff. I'm linking. I'm the man. And there are other drifters or other people who had 240 started showing up in the area where I was going to college, and I was better than all of them. So I'm like, shoot, I'm that guy. Like, so you know what? I thought to myself, I'm ready for a V8 swap. I'm gonna take this perfectly good Tennessee S14 and yank the K out of it and put this Infinity Q45 V8 in it with my only tools I had was a toolbox like this big and a Harbor Freight grinder and a Harbor Freight tubing bender that I had to pack the tubing with playground sand to bend it to keep it from crushing. And I'm gonna build this V8 Pro-Am car because I've been drifting for 2 years on the street in skid pads. And I thought I was that guy. And instead I sidelined. Yeah. So I sidelined myself instead for multiple years because I started to do something stupid. You know, and it's just staying humble.
And it's not saying that you can't, you know, do that. Like you haven't, like you started in 2014, you said, right? It's 2009, so that's 5 years, right? It's not a lot, but it's a really respectable amount of time because how many drifters you know have been drifting for 5 years?
There's dudes in Pro 2 that have been drifting.
They aren't doing that. Now, you have a car that makes a lot of horsepower, that has a lot of good things on it, but you have the experience and the skill set and the know-how to use those components to get the maximum efficiency out of those parts because you have the education and the skill and the know-how to do it. But if you put that same car in some dude's hands that's 1 year into this and just knows how to do a couple figure eights and knows how to do one track layout at some random place in the United States, he's gonna suffer because he doesn't have that background and that skill set and the know-how that you have, you know. I think a lot of drifters just need to look in the mirror sometimes and say, yo, am I really ripping? Am I really the one getting it? You know, and travel. Go to another area in the United States and look at them drive and say, am I ready? Or you spent all this money to go to a Pro-Am and all that. Go to another Pro-Am, see how they run it. Go to Formula Drift and sit down and really don't just go to the event. Go to the event, try to get involved, see what the hell is going on and ask yourself, am I ready to take this next step? You know, whether it's Pro 2, Pro 1, you know. So for the beginners, just relax, have fun, enjoy the fact that you don't have to worry about all those headaches that are gonna come later on if you decide to do this. Enjoy it for what it is, because once you take it entirely too serious, you're going to ruin it for yourself. So what's the biggest mistake they do? They ruin it for themselves way early on. They'll go build a crazy car, they'll wreck it and say like, I'm never doing this again. And then we actually make out because we'll buy those cars for like $1,000. Be like, yeah, it sucks, dude. So here you go. I'll give you $1,000 for everything. But it's a shame, man. Like some of them kind of do it to themselves. You know what I mean? And
the goal is to grow the community and expand it.
Well, I mean, I think nowadays, for instance, maybe before when I started drifting, or even when you started with it, you know, started doing it in 2014, there wasn't a lot of places for you to go to learn. I think now in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of organizations that have been showing interest, that have been realizing we need to start teaching the new generation on how to drift. And I look at it like, if you're a really good driver, a grassroots driver, and you have built your career, whether it's social media, or like a legitimate drifting career off of the backs of these organizations, these grassroots organizations that gave you the platform to start drifting. You owe it to your region to go back and train the newer drifters, no matter how annoying, how much of a dickhead they are, because you were that guy. I was that guy. I was that Philadelphia street punk Latino kid that Club Loose would always give me shit for. And I thought they were just doing it because they didn't like me. They were doing it because they were trying to teach me the right way to do this. And nowadays, I don't think a lot of Group A drivers care enough to put up with that type of stuff, because they're like, whatever, just let them just suck. Because a lot of Pro-Am drivers, I mean, a lot of Group A drivers are really good, experienced drivers. They just want to be on top for as long as they can be on top.
Yep.
You got to understand, you got to pass the rings along. So if you're a beginner, find out where these clinics are going on. Drift India had one this one. Club Loose has one in a week from now. There's schools, you know what I mean? Chelsea came to me and says, let's build these BMW, these E36s. We're gonna, and Chelsea knows, everybody knows Chelsea knows E36s like the back of his hand. And everything got put together. We have a great opportunity for people to come to rent a vehicle, have a whole day at a private track where it's just either one of the instructors and you, whoever it may be, and you're there, you're turning a lot of laps. You know, you're turning like over 50 laps. You have a whole day. Nobody's around. Just like you were saying, you're not going to be scared. You're not going to get judged. It's just going to be you, an instructor, and a racetrack, and a car. So, I mean, look into it. You know, schoolofdrift.com. Check it out. You know, BMWs are already equipped, ready to go. It's the first of its kind, you know, in the United States. You know, I don't think anybody has a better package going on. Chelsea's been doing this since we were teenagers. You know what I mean? And we don't know anything else but this. You know, that's why he does that, and I think that's why I'm so passionate about grassroots drifting, because you got both spectrums from two kids that came out of the East Coast that are just like, well, if the organizers ain't gonna do it, somebody has to do it.
All right, so progressing into now looking into more like a Group B or Group C driver that can now link the course, but is still kind of learning. What are you guys looking for in the Group A section, or looking for in that driver that's in Group B or Group C to really progress to that Group A level, to be able to be tandeming on doors with other people, other than obviously a cage? But like, what else is there? Like, what are you looking for that progresses that driver into the top level or the top group?
So I'm not going to dare speak on any other organization on how they do break their stuff down, because I don't have the inside information on that. I can really only speak on how we do it at Club Loose. Yep. We've had the A, B, and C group layout or the way of doing things for as long as I've been there. So the way it's broken down, at least at that track at Englishtown Raceway, New Jersey, the front track, which is the one that you guys mainly see in the videos, if you guys look at East Coast Bash or whatever event we have at Club Loose, that's exclusively Group A drivers. Obviously is doing the tandem. B is doing single runs, and then there's C group, which is on the back track. So it's split up. There's a front track and a back track. When new drivers show up that have never drifted before, they obviously start out with Group C on the back track. What we're looking for is consistency. You know what I mean? Are you being consistent? Are you taking, I'm even already looking to see, are you at least attempting to take the right line? Yeah. Because the way things are laid out on the back track, you have to take a right line in order to do the whole layout correctly, to do it smoothly. I think the bar is set really high for Group C at Club Loose, because that's how it's always been. Yep. So you're going into a blind right-hand turn. You don't even see the turn. It's over a crest, you know what I mean? And you don't even see it. So we look for fluidity, consistency. Can you do it consecutively 3 times in a row? Sometimes we'll stop the Group C guys, and the one, can they get bumped up, which is something you should never ask us. But there is some guys that are doing pretty good, and somehow we get into a conversation with it, and we'll stop everybody and say, all right, let's see you do 3 of them straight back to back. Perfect line, don't mess up. That's a lot of pressure. If he can do it under that pressure, he can do it in front of a full packed crowd at East Coast Bash when you go to the front track. So we look for consistency. Can you continuously do the run? Was it just a fluke, or can you do it, more than one time? And then they get moved up to Group B. When in Group B, you start getting scrutinized way more on consistency, on your correct line, on throttle modulation, where you're doing your switchbacks. How are you messing up? How are you bailing? Because now we're starting to look at, if you're somebody that knows how to bail out of a bad situation, you're kind of getting ready for what we consider Group A standard. So bailing is an art form in itself. You know, Chelsea did an amazing video at the School of Drift with, I think, Odie and Matt Fields about properly tandeming, and then there's a section in there where he teaches you the right way to bail. They all explain. So like, you guys should definitely check that on YouTube. They do a really great job on how you should be bailing. Yeah, really good bail on how to bail out of situations and how to tandem, you know, which is a whole other subject on how people have been messing that up. But being a Group B driver, consistently doing the right line, riding the embankment, because we have an embankment at Ecklo. You've been there, you've seen there's an embankment at the end. When we start seeing, as in Group A drivers at this point, start watching the Group B drivers, usually they're homeboy or somebody they just like who drives. It's kind of up to all of the Group A drivers and the staff to say, yeah, this dude's really good, let's put him to the test. I'm not saying this is going to happen in one season. There's guys that have been in Group B for 2 seasons, then they've been in Group A for a season, 2 seasons, and then they don't get to Group A to tandem until they're 5 years into it sometimes. And then there's other ones that in 2 seasons they get into it. But we're very hard on the drivers. Usually the people that gain that Group A status faster than others is seat time. They put in the work, they've traveled everywhere to go get seat time. There's plenty of tracks in the tri-state area for people to get seat time and stuff like that. And they eventually come back, they do really good, they learned, they've come to clinics, they've picked up the idea of lines and why it's important, why proper setup, why proper maintenance after a drifting event's really important, and they put it all together, and then eventually they put you behind someone that's a Group A driver to see if you can follow. Because we're not gonna put you in front, because if you get the shakes and then you spin, you're gonna cause some people some money. So eventually, you know, the Group A driver, who's pretty much kind of chaperoning or sponsoring that dude, it's kind of up to him to tell him like, yo man, this is what you need to do to get closer to me. This is what we're looking for so I can trust you. And as this driver starts getting used to that and used to that and used to that, eventually he's going to get put in the front. You know, when that process happens and how it happens, I think it varies with every organization and how strict every organization wants to be on their drivers and what standards every organization has on their drivers. We're pretty strict. I think we have a big fame on being really strict on our drivers because, like I said, we're hucking our cars that are thousands of pounds into these corners, and I need to trust you when there's like 10 people and we're cutting through smoke during transitions, that if you mess up, you're gonna know how to bail so all of us don't get, you know, squeezed together and ends up costing everybody thousands of dollars to, you know, it happens, you know what I mean? So that's our process. I don't know how everybody else does it, but, you know, for us, that's how we do it. We kind of look at it, you know, loosely summarized, that's how we kind of do things over there.
Yeah, just like skateboarding. There's a right and a wrong way to fall. You don't jump down a set of stairs and go splat and land flat. Yeah. You try to tuck and roll.
Yeah. Tuck and roll, do something. And if you tuck and roll, you'll actually see skateboarders be like, oh, that was a nice save, dude. Yeah. They applaud you because they're like, yo, for him to bail that way, that took skill in itself. Yeah. And I've seen that in drifting where I've seen somebody avoid somebody. I'm like, whoa, that was sick. How did he even pull that off? You know?
What was it? There was one Yokoi bailed on freaking Justin Pollock in New Jersey and like maintained drift going around him and they like spun side by side. I rewatched it like 4 times. Like,
where the typical person would watch that and be like, oh, that was cool, you messed up. But then like the real drifters was like, yo, that was hard. That was that was dope. Right, that was cool the way he did that.
Calm and collective.
Well, guys, thanks for watching the podcast. Again, if you guys want a quick Instagram or Facebook handle that they can find you guys at or anything like that.
Instagram is Reese Marin. Yeah, at Reese Marin. You type that in Facebook, that'll be there too. All the information on the School of Drift is on my bio page. But you can go find School of Drift for that school, for anybody that's interested in taking that school. Cool. I am trying to do a East Coast school. We're still kind of working on it. So anybody that's interested in learning how to drift on the East Coast, we're kind of looking into doing kind of the same format on the East Coast, provide cars as well too. So we'll have one on the West and then hopefully one on the East. No really set time or date on that just because I'm involved with some other things at the moment. But yeah, that's where you can find me. And East Coast is the best. And I don't care what anybody says. I'm out.
Beast Coast.
Beast Coast. Come see us. You know where we at. The greatest place on earth.
From Washington, D.C., so I have to agree with him.
There you go. There you go, right?
All right, Dan. And
it's just my name, at Dan Perlenfine. On Instagram, same thing. Just search it in Facebook, you'll find it. Or hashtag SC325.
Cool.
Nice.
And everyone knows Jelani. And again, be sure to subscribe to the channel and give it a share. Thanks for listening again, guys, and be sure to check out for the next one.